So, well, I will make a start. Thank you all very much for coming. I think most of you been here before, so this is just, so this is Outer Limits Online. This is a kind of network. Oh, Sarah Mayhew's popped in. This is an opportunity whilst we're in lockdown, really, to gather every week, a bit of a social. I was really, really keen to get the chance to chat to artists who are from our area, artists that we love and feel that they've got, you know, stuff to offer, and inspire us with, and insight, and sort of warts and all the difficulties of, you know, working within the industry. So Vickie lives in Grays, but you're originally from
Billericay,
and you moved to Grays because of your partner, is that right?
Yeah, I can't get him to leave.
He won't leave Grays.
He's moved 3 doors down, is where he grew up. So if you work that out, my mother-in-law is 3 doors down.
And Vickie, actually, we had a kind of crossover, actually, because I did a show at Theatre 503, which I think was either just after Mudlarks went into it or just before. I do remember it very clearly. And obviously, when I was looking for, you know, for people who were writing about the area, I obviously came across Mudlarks and read it, and you know, we've been chatting ever since. And Vickie is actually under commission from the Queen's. She's writing an adaptation of a Rava, which she will tell us about later, which hasn't been announced yet, but she's writing an adaptation of a book around an Essex subject, and she sent us the draft on Friday. And we've read it, and we had a Zoom meet with the writer of the novel today, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all terribly exciting. It's a really brilliant first draft. And that might be something people might want to ask about drafting and giving over the first draft as well, because that's
horrendous.
It's horrendous. Even after kind of years of writing. But tell us a little bit about your background. So you're from Billericay. How did you meet drama?
I met drama by having a massive fight with my mum about my GCSEs, about doing music or drama. You had to pick, and I chose drama, much to her fury. And then got dragged along to a youth group at the Towngate Theatre in Basildon. And it changed my life. We did The Tempest, and I was in a group being Ariel. And it was brilliant. But what I learned most about that whole experience was it was shut down because of cuts. And I was like 14, and we were all backstage. I think The Tempest was one of the last productions, and there was people losing their jobs, and there was grown men crying, and it was like I was part of a family, even though I was only little, like part of this family of putting theatre on. And yeah, that was my first experience of and I just thought, I want to be part of this. We're all trying to do something really good here, and the Tory government are not letting us do it. And yeah, it was a mad old time. But it kind of got a little fire in my belly going, and we all went up to Parliament and had a go at David Amos.
Yay! So you're quite politicised. That's brilliant. So quite young, you were politicised through the cuts to culture.
Yeah, I'm not without realising it. Do you know what I mean? It was and I'm not a deeply political person particularly, but yeah, it was just like, how are you taking this away from us? And it was such a community of which I'd never been a part of, and then that was it. Like every time we put a production on, it was a little community, and it was really important. And I just knew it was something I could do. Telling stories in some way was part of what I was going to do, and I didn't know for probably until I turned 30 what I was going to do. Like that went on for a really long time.
Because I think often the route through to theatre is through youth theatre or through productions at schools. It's such an important introduction. But I think that sense of family and community is really key to that experience as well. But tell us why 30 then? So from 14 to 30, what
so I went on and did a drama degree, which was a very broad degree. I did acting in my second year and directing in my third year. And I think deep down I always thought I was going to be a director, and you know, I still have that burning desire in me a little bit, but I was offered creative writing while I was at uni and went, oh my god, no, like what a fool. And then I did a bit of acting when I left uni, and I was shocking. Well, I really suffer from nerves, and I just couldn't do it. I really enjoy acting, but I wasn't cut out for it. And meandered through my 20s, kind of trying to I did stage management and directed a little bit of this, and I kept saying, when I'm older, I'm going to do a master's. When I'm older, I'm going to do this master's, and I'll probably do it in directing. But kept having this urge to write, and I did a playwriting course at Paines Plough with Vickie Featherstone, and it was amazing. But her child got chickenpox halfway through our session, and she had to like leave, and we were halfway through this exercise, and she said, oh my god, I think you're going to have to all come back in different sessions for me to finish. I can't just leave this unfinished. So we were like, oh god, but go away, do this and this and this, and then when you come back we can talk about your work. So it was kind of good. So I went away and did the piece that we'd been asked to do, and then when I went back, it was just me and my friend with Vickie Featherstone. Like no one else turned up. So I had this like one-to-one with Vickie Featherstone on this piece of work, the first bit of writing I'd ever really done. And it hadn't turned out how I wanted it. It was really, really sad, like so sad. And I didn't know why it was. She said, read it out. I said, but I'll have a go, but it's really sad. And I sort of wept all the way through reading it out. And at the end, she said, what did you want it to be like? And I could really clearly describe how I wanted it to be. And she gave me these absolutely clear pointers of what to work like. We were talking about Beckett a lot and rhythm, and it was about an old woman and an old man and the way they spoke. And she was so clear on her feedback. And I went away and I did exactly what she said. And then I entered it into a competition, and it was one of the winners. And then from there, everyone was like, you've got to write, you've got to write a full length play. And I was like, but I don't know how to write a full, like, how do you write a full length play? How do you come up with ideas that can sustain like a whole 2 hours, hour and a half hour? And I just didn't know where to begin. And a close friend's husband said to me, that's what you do your master's in. That's what you do your master's in. And then one of my best friends died, and I turned 30, and I was like, I've got to stop fucking around. I'm doing my master's, and I'm going to do it in writing. Because life, you just need to get on. You need to get on and do what you want to do. And the master's changed my life. It was absolutely the best thing I've ever done. Absolutely. Like, it was so practical. And I did a bit of, in the first year, I did a bit of everything. I did a module on TV, a module on theatre, and a module on film, which I was awful at. And then we specialised for the second year, and I chose theatre. Spent that whole year with a mentor. And then the play that I wrote the year I graduated was Mudlarks. And it was me applying everything that I'd learned on that course. And I'm still applying everything I learned from that course. I go to a meeting for a TV meeting, and I'm applying, like, the meetings I'd go to with my senior lecturer, where she would, you know, the way she expected you to talk about your work, which I didn't have a clue how to do that before, you know. And the meeting we had today, Doug, you know, all that way of being able to talk about my work, I learned on that course, you know. It was really, really good, really good.
And it's true, because you're very eloquent about it, and it really helps. It really helps to support the writer as well, of, you know, getting a very clear indication of what you know you want to set out to do. Talking about setting out to do, so that's kind of brilliant. How did Mudlarks, you wrote Mudlarks, then how did it get picked up? Because obviously it had a really really great run, didn't it? Because it went to High Tide and it went to the Bush.
Went to 503.
503
and then it went to the Bush.
Didn't it? So how does it go from writing a play in an MA to it being picked up at a pretty high profile festival?
Well, a group of friends who were all writers, we decided, all three of us had plays that we'd got to a certain level on our own, and then we got some actors who were friends to do a reading, and we got some other friends who were directors to come along. So we did a reading, and we just pushed that script as far as we could go. Like, I worked on it so much. And then Rob Drummer, who was the literary manager at High Tide at the time, was doing a tour of the east of England, trying to connect with writers and setting up in the regional theatres in the east and doing a workshop. And he wanted you to send in the first 10 pages just so he could get an idea of the kind of people who were attending. So I sent the first 10 pages of Mudlarks. And then within a few days, he emailed back and said, could you send the rest of it? I need to know what happens. And I thought, oh, that's quite good. I think that's good. Anyway, did that and then heard nothing. And I went to the workshop and I was just, there was like 30 other people. I'm sat there going like, you know, nothing. He like just ignored me. So I thought, he obviously thought that was shit. And then it went on for a few months. And the reason it went quiet was because he wanted to put it in the festival, and he had to get Stephen, the artistic director, to read it. He had to get all the, you know, you always think there's nothing going on, but there's a whole thing behind. People are working, and there's things going on, and you have to be brave and be patient. And he finally emailed and said, oh, sorry, it's been so long. We love it. We want to put it on in the festival in Suffolk. So it went on there in the roof, in the loft, which was extraordinary because I walked in and thought, you can't put my play, like, it was so, you can't have the river wall, like, but the set designer, it was beautiful. It was so poetic, like the beach just went on for miles, even though we were in this tiny, it was brilliant. And then it got transferred to Theatre 503 for a month, of which they asked me to redraft it again. You're like, oh my God, like it's already, I'm very naive, and my first play, I was like, but it's already been put on, you know, and like, yeah, but it's a different, very, very claustrophobic, and you are going to have a bit of a wall, and, you know, it's very different. So we sort of redrafted it a little bit, and that was there for months. And then and I had really lovely press, and then Madany from the Bush came along, and they decided to pick it up, and like 5 months, that was in May, I think, and then put it on for a month in the October at the Bush, which the Bush was how, I'm a bit of a set person, the set was how it was when I wrote it in my head.
Okay.
It was like a dream, like literally a dream come true.
But that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because lots of writers won't, I think, I don't know, thinking about today and the new draft of the commission, is that you are writing for, you see the stage when you write, and actually a lot of writers don't, I find, particularly early writing. It often can feel like a TV script rather than it's been written for. So what do you, I suppose, how do you see as you write? Is it
I think I am a very visual person.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mudlarks, the idea of Mudlarks wasn't a theme, it wasn't an issue, it was, all I could see was these kids throwing a piece of concrete off a motorway bridge. That's all I could see. And then the idea developed from there, and I said, well, I don't think I want to set it there, but they're running, where are they going to run, where they're running to, and then I could see the river, and I could see the wall, and then the wall became a character in itself, and the mud was a character in itself. I think I'm very, the place is almost a character.
Yeah. And so, I mean, interesting today, because obviously the book that you're adapting is quite filmic, because it's got lots of scenes in London. It flashes back in time. It's a lot of locations, but actually the thing that you've written has ended up predominantly being in one location. So again, so with Mudlarks and this, you're drawn to writing for one location. Why is that?
I think just it allows you to do something that you can't do in TV and film, which is spend a really long time and get to know these people and get right inside them. And you know, if you put these people in one place for long enough, everything finally it comes out. If you give them time, the juicy stuff comes out. And that was the hard thing for Mudlarks, was keeping the juicy, holding it back, because they want to vomit it all out as soon as they land on the mud. But it was, yeah, keeping that. But you keep them there, it's going to come out at some point.
And so, tell us about the place. Just for those who haven't read Mudlarks, where is it? It's
down. If you go down into Grays Town Centre, Grays is on the river, and you can see Kent across. But it's kind of, Mudlarks is kind of an amalgamation of two beaches. It's the River Walk, and there's all graffiti. People are allowed to graffiti on it. It's amazing. But to get down to that bit, you have to go into the industrial estate, park up, go through bushes, down. There's all quad bike type things. You're not meant to be down, and then you get down there, and it's so industrial, but beautiful at the same time. And you can see the Dartford Bridge, and it's very secluded. I think lots of naughty stuff goes on down there. But you couldn't really jump onto the mud there. If you go back down into Grays Town Centre, you could jump off the wall onto the mud. But that felt, I don't think they'd hide out there. So it's a kind of, between us, it's a sort of an amalgamation of two places.
And it's about two lads. What are their characters?
Oh, don't do this to me. Do you know what? I was taken to Strasbourg, where they did a little bit of Mudlarks, and I had to talk about it, and I got absolutely brain freeze, because I just had my baby as well, and I couldn't remember any of my characters' names.
Right, but you don't have to. I mean, they're kind of working class lads, aren't they?
Yeah, I can't remember them. Jake, Charlie, and Wayne, and they're three mates, and they've been brought up down on the estate down by the river. And Jake's got dreams and aspirations, and he's been hiding that from his mates. And that part of the river is their playground. They've been down there all the time as kids, but you probably wouldn't go down there now, because that's seen as something we did as kids. And they find themselves back there, you know, and because of this terrible thing that they've done, of what they're running from. And Charlie's also running from an incident that happened at the pool hall that night. So they've all got there, and Wayne, social services are about to turn up, or probably have turned up at his house while he's been out, because his dad who had care of him and his brother has fucked off as well. So they've all got their reasons for enjoying pretending to be kids again for one last night.
Why did you want to write about that world and those characters?
I think they're misunderstood. Like, Grays is kind of the station is like right by an estate that lots of people don't go. You shouldn't go. You shouldn't, drive your car through it, whatever. And these kids are all like walk past by commuters all the time, and you can tell people are a little bit like scared. And I just wanted to kind of know a bit more about why a lot of kids around here don't feel like they can leave. They don't go to university. They don't do higher ed, don't do A levels and stuff like that. So yeah, it was just a kind of trying to understand it, really.
So just on that, because obviously there's a real desire to give voice to, I suppose, a kind of voiceless on stage, to and create a place for unheard narratives. So what, I mean, that's obviously one play, and you've written other plays, and you've written for other forms. And so what is important to you as a writer when you're writing?
I just want to see different people, different voices, different stories have a chance to be put on stage, and for us to not see the same stuff all the time. I really like work with a sense of place as well. Mudlarks was very specific, to here, but it was also it was about British kids, really, feeling shat on and left out of stuff. So yeah, I'm doing a radio thing with my co-writer Natalie Mitchell, who's an amazing she's working class writer from Kent, and we've just written a piece about a kind of 50-year-old woman, and it was just so good to write for a real character with real issues, and like, she's from Kent, and we've just like made it proper Kent woman with kids and fucking up and being shit. And so I just enjoy writing that stuff, and I enjoy watching it as well.
And so then if we go on to, so Vickie's writing an adaptation of a book called The Witchfinder's Sister by Beth Underdown, which came out, I think, last year, maybe 18 months ago, which is about the Witchfinder General, Matthew Hopkins. So it's all set in, it's about the Essex witch trials, but the story is not about him, is it? It's about his sister. So it's a really, really particular lens, and it's particularly about the female experience within that, which is kind of undocumented, isn't it? So it's sort of not based in fact, but it's sort of based in, Beth spoke about it today, of what was plausible. So what's it like adapting a novel?
Well, it's fun. I really like it. It's delicate. It's not as freeing as coming up with your own stuff. Or a lot of the bloody work's been done for you, but it's putting it into a different medium is a challenge, and I love it. I love that challenge. For me, I think where I've got a very visual head. This novel, and I adapted a young person's novel not last year, the year before, and I had the same feeling. I could see what my play would look like as I was reading it, and that's all I can do. I've been lucky. Both novelists have been absolutely incredibly generous and willing to have all their lovely characters they've created kind of honed down to just a few. But yeah, I love the visual world of novels, and I love translating that into a theatrical form.
And what is it about that? Because obviously I came to you with a novel, but you could have said no. What was it about the novel that appealed to you? I'm just thinking about, because of what you've said about what is important for you as a writer, so then suddenly to be given another story.
Yeah, it is weird, and I guess oh God, I could have read it and said no, but I love that it's a female lead. I think, which is an important story to tell, and it just feels really it feels really relevant. It's a piece about women. It's a piece about how we treat each other as women, and the power of sticking together that we need to as women, because we still need to punch through. So even back then, women were having to stick up for each other and look out for each other, because they weren't really in control of pretty much anything back then. So yeah, it's been really fun to write five really interesting female roles. And I'm still discovering them. I'm still trying to find them at the moment. But
it's interesting today after our meeting with Beth, because Beth, she's sort of given you a license to change stuff, hasn't she? And you when we chatted afterwards, you were, I'd say, okay, what's the next stage? And you picked up the novel and went, well, I'm putting that aside now. Which is like really an indication that you now can make it yours.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's I'm really excited about that next bit, because because she's given us permission to do that. She's cut the ties a little bit, which I think this first draft I felt a bit loyal to her novel, and I felt a bit tied to it because I haven't wanted it to do too much. I've done enough, I think, to make it a good play, hopefully. But I think the fun's going to start now. I know which ones I want to write about, and now I'm gonna put that to one side and fly free with these lovely ladies.
So tell us what's the life of a writer like? But ups and downs.
You are?
The ups and downs, and how do you support yourself, or how do you?
Well, this is all the bits that I didn't really know when I. And they tried to sort of go over it in the master's degree, but I think I have since found out is the life of any freelance person. It's having projects all in different stages and having different things to be working on, not just one. Having one can't financially sustain being able to just do this full time. I've had to go into trying to get into TV, which has been a real. It doesn't come naturally. Excuse me. It doesn't come naturally to me, TV writing. I've had to really take the theatre hat off, which hasn't wanted to come off at all. Like, the ideas I come up with are theatre ideas, and I thought you could kind of fanny them into TV ideas.
Well, that's really interesting.
I've been in some really not embarrassing, but meetings where I've exposed that, because I've not understood how story works in TV, and an idea for theatre, I can sit it on stage and it can be an hour, and in TV it will be 2 minutes. And they're like, and next, what else happens? I'm like, oh, that would be it. Oh, okay.
That's so succinct about the difference between TV and theatre. But it's very unusual, because you are, I think a lot of writers start out writing theatre but really they're writing TV, but you've done it the other way around.
Yeah, it's been a really hard transition, and I'm still learning that. I'm still learning. Natalie Mitchell, who I write all my TV stuff with, she's like the queen of TV. She's amazing. So I'm glad I got her holding my hand, really. She writes Freestanders. She's absolutely the queen of story and of plot. And she'll always give me a kick when she'll say, no, that's not got longevity. That won't. Yeah, she's very good. And then radio sort of sits somewhere in between. I think I've done one radio play, and it was one of the best. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I hope I get to do some more, because it was so much fun. And it's somewhere in between. It is quite theatrical.
And do you pitch the projects, or do they come to you?
For radio?
Well, I think for everything.
I think when you're more established, they come to you. But when I did Mudlarks, a radio producer contacted my agent, and then I went for coffee with that radio producer. And what I didn't know then was that it's a bit like dating. You find your radio producer, and that's your radio producer pretty much for your career.
Wow.
And you develop, and it's lovely. You develop a relationship with them, and you pitch ideas to them all the time. And then when they've got one that they think, yep, they then go and pitch it to the commissioner. So he had to know my idea inside out and stick up for me in those meetings and push it through. But I was terrible at that as well. Absolutely, I could not get a radio pitch for love or money, and it took a few it took Natalie had got 2 or 3 radio plays to say, would you like to look at one of my pitches of actually what it looks like? And me going, yes, please. And it was nothing like what I was doing. And then and we were working on something else, and they were an ex-radio producer, and she said, for God's sake, let me have a look at what you're doing, because I've just got another rejection. And she was like, oh, Vic, the only interesting bit is the bit you put right down the bottom. It needs to go right up the top. That's your voice. And I'd had so many rejections. I was putting what I thought they wanted. And yeah, I'd lost it. And once I got it back,
what they thought they wanted rather than what?
Rather than doing a Vickie pitch.
Yeah.
That just has to be laid out in the way they want it, but also be an idea that can sit in the world of radio. So it's taken me a while to get.
Why did you write something that you thought they would want to hear rather than something that came from you?
Because I don't know, I pitched a few of my ideas, but I don't think they were right for radio in the angle I was coming at.
Okay.
So then you start going, well, what's a Radio 2 play then? It's like this then. It's a Radio 4 play, it's like this. And that's not right. You know, you have to write your story.
I think that's an important thing. You have to write your story. It has to come from you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
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 What would you say, last question, then I'll open it up. What would you say to your younger self? To my younger self, I would, and I actually think I'd probably say this to my old self as well, is just to have more confidence in myself, believe in myself more. I've never had that kind of confidence, which I think a lot of it comes from being a woman. I think, you know, I'm not very good at putting myself forward. I see other people around me seem to be putting themselves forward much better than I do, and I'm still learning to do that. But yeah, I'd go, you're all right. You can do it. Yeah. I think there's probably something that where lots of us will probably share that similar. Where do you think, and just where does that confidence or lack of confidence come from? Because you are all right.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
You don't have to. I don't need to. Yeah. You don't need to go into that place. It's fine.
I have to go and get a glass of wine.
Yeah, then we can do it in your pub. We can all come.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly, I suppose, you know, from I don't know. I'd take it from, and I've heard it. It's a common thing from lots of people that we've spoken to over the period of time throughout a limit. Certainly, my confidence, and you know, and I run a building and all that, but it took me a while to get to that point where I pitched myself confidently, and I think it was that kind of imposter syndrome about a boy growing up on a council estate in Essex in a room of people who went to Cambridge. It sort of cripples you. It can cripple you.
It does. And I think, people, they hear your voice and they judge you straight away. You know, I went to my first lecture at the university and it was fucking poetry, and they all went, can you say your name and where you're from? And I was like, yeah, it's Vickie. I'm Vickie from Billericay. And they all just absolutely, and I was like, that was it. For the whole of uni, I was like Essex bird, Vickie from Billericay, and they used to extend the poem down my door. People would write another rhyming thing that went, you know. So yeah, I think, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to open it up, everyone. So, has anyone got a question for? Thank you, Vickie. That's really, I got to know you better as well, just through this, and then we've talked at length about work. It's great for me to hear all of that. Does anyone want to ask a question? Jonathan.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I had a meeting about a play that I wanted to write about home. So I'm from near Southend, and they said, you need to find your Essex voice. You know, it'd be really important for you with this writing, any writing you want to do about home, to find your Essex voice. I mean, do you have any sort of tips and ideas and techniques you guys can give me in terms of finding my Essex voice and that sort of thing? Because I'm still thinking about that to this day, this question. It still sits with me. And I'm sort of like, find my Essex voice, find my Essex voice.
Do you think it holds you back?
So what holds me back?
Them having said that?
No, I don't think so, but it definitely intrigues me because, you know, there are writers, you know, like I think of David Eldridge in particular. I think he has a proper solid find of the Essex voice in his plays. And I guess, and they did say to me, you know, think of someone like David Eldridge, you know, who has this sort of understanding, even in a play like Beginning, where it's someone from Ireland and someone from Essex. And yet you really hear the Essexness in that character, the male character. And they were like, you need to find that Essex voice in the characters that you have. And I was like, okay. And I was, I'm sort of, I don't know if I'm hitting walls.
I think you just, yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? I mean, I think it's like what Vickie was talking about was her voice. You know, it has to come from her. So I think it has to come from you. I mean, I think unless they were talking about the speech patterns, you know, the way that characters spoke, how they speak, that might be it. But I think your Essex voice, I think really you have to, you know, I'm from Essex, and what is my Essex voice? I'd be like, oh God, what is that? You know, it's but I know what my voice is, and Vickie knows what her voice is. But I think, Jonathan, it's probably, to tell stories, they've got to come from you. So whether that's Essex or somewhere else, it doesn't really matter. I think it's got to come from you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's always just confused me when they said that. It was just like, it was a pitching session with them, and I was just like, it got me really thinking, like, you know, what is my Essex voice? And I was like, am I even from Essex? Where am I from?
Well, there you are. That's the question. Maybe that's the story.
Who am I?
That's probably the story about, you know, that's an interesting story about Essex. Somebody, you know, what is their Essex voice? Because everybody, the interesting thing is people want to put something on you, like Vickie's talking about, Vickie, you know, Vickie from Billericay, these kind of preconceptions, and maybe they're making preconceptions about what you should write.
Yeah.
I mean, the interesting thing about Dan, and I'm going to stop there because I want people to have contact with Vickie, but we've got a session next week where we're going to kind of network and talk about these kind of bigger issues anyway, particularly around class and Essex. So come along to that, and maybe
definitely
that a little bit further. Is someone else got a question for Vickie?
Yeah, I did have one.
Hi, Molly.
It's fine. You can go. I'll go after.
Oh,
Yeah. You guys, fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to ask basically in terms of writing for radio and theatre, like what do you mind as a writer in terms of the difference in those mediums?
What do I what? The what difference?
Sorry, that just writing for theatre and radio, that what do you keep in mind when writing for those two different mediums as a writer? Because I'm, you know, when you're interested in writing for both, just how do you flip it from one to the other?
It is hard, and I'm still radio. I'm still learning that. I've gone to a few radio workshops myself and sessions, and listened to a lot of radio as well. That's important. But everyone always says you can go so far on radio. You can go to the bloody moon on the radio, you know, and but also think sound. My friend Natalie's radio play was one of the best I've heard. It was all about a tape player that it was the dad's tape player and his music, and the kids were getting divorced, and it was the way if they kept in touch with their dad was listening to his old tapes, because these kids had never seen a bloody tape, and it was to do with music and sound effects. It's things like that. I think you got to think, radio is much more, I can't describe it, but more to do with sound.
And the kind of variation in sound, isn't it? Otherwise it's, because you can't visually, you can change something in theatre, can't you? We all, as an audience, we want it to change again and again, emotionally, visually, the physical dynamics, and when that's taken away, you have the emotion, of course, but also sound. You can change things, can't you, because of the music and supply, energies, and I think you're absolutely right there. Is there anyone else? Molly, you were next.
Yes, I absolutely loved Mudlarks, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
It's really great. So I'm going to read a lot more of your work.
Oh, thank you.
So my question was, in regard to, as a writer, how much influence do you have over like the casting process and the directing, or is it kind of to the director, and how does it kind of work?
I've had some good experiences and bad experiences, and I think generally I like to be part of casting, and as far as I know, it's normally it should be in my I think it's in most writers' contracts that it's an ensemble thing. It's the director is leading everything, but that I'm part of that, and I'm part of the decision making. When we did Mudlarks, I had a very, very, very posh director, Eton, and we had all these lovely boys coming in, and one he absolutely adored, and he looked posh, he looked at me as if, don't you think? And I went, I think, oh my God, I was like, no, just no. And I was so relieved I was in the room, because then he was like, okay, and he started to go down the road that we went down. But I think it's important to be part of it. Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't always work out like that, does it? But no. I think that's interesting. There's another question about class, isn't it? If your ownership of stories and who should direct them, and the director's authorship, and there's a really tricky balance there, isn't it? I mean, you really want a perfect collaboration, don't you?
You do.
That's what you're aiming for, particularly on a new piece of work as well, because you need to be really sensitive and facilitate the writer to achieve what they want to.
Yeah, and I think as a writer as well, you might have your ideas, and actually you need to be open to a director saying, no, this person's going to really unlock this and unlock this role, and come up with something that surprises you, and you need to trust the casting director and the director, because I've learned loads from you've got to be open.
Great. Another question?
Yeah, I've got one.
Go on, Ed.
Which writers really inspire you, or do you or you borrow things from?
I really love Beckett. I really like Enda Walsh. Anything by Enda Walsh. I think the Walworth Farce is probably in my top 3 plays ever. Just love it. I don't know. I really like Pinter as well. And Arthur Miller as well. Trying to think of some newbies. Let me think of some newbies that I really like. Natalie Mitchell, obviously. David Eldridge, I really love. I love him, Basildon.
It's interesting. You're really influenced by.
Oh my God, though, they're all men. They're all men.
And they're all men. Yeah. Let's go on to another question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sadie Hasler. Sadie Hasler.
Sadie Hasler. Well, you are actually. You're a big fan of Sadie.
I am a fan of Sadie.
Yeah. And any other questions? Any other questions?
Yeah.
Lauren.
Yeah. I was just interested when you're talking about drafting. If you're not getting someone else to read, so you've written your first draft at home, and you know it's probably quite rubbish, and you need to do a second draft. How do you approach that second draft if you've not shown the work to anybody else?
That is a really tricky one. I would. Oh God, I'd have to find someone to read it. And you know, I've got my people, so I think it would be about finding, if like, I don't know, if go join a writing group where you'll instantly have a load of people that you read each other's work. My MA instantly gave me a group of people that would read my work. Yeah.
I think there's something interesting on that though, Vickie, isn't it? Because I think this question came up within another session about then how do you handle the notes that people give you?
Yeah.
Because sometimes people give you notes that are probably not useful. So how do you choose which ones?
It took me a while, and I you know, a few bad experiences, but like I've got like 3 people who read my early work. But if no one can read it, I think give yourself as long as you can bear to not read it.
Mm.
Absolutely come back to it with, you know, you haven't thought about it for a long time, so completely fresh eyes, and you'll learn loads from reading it. Then you'll be surprised of how good some bits are and how awful some other bits are. But yeah, fresh eyes, I guess.
I think that's a really important, that's a really useful note, I think, about finding the distance, isn't there? And what's it like looking back at Mudlarks?
I look back at it with fondness, actually. I have so many happy memories. My lovely actors. I just think of my lovely actors, and you know, I did so many drafts. When it went to the bush, they asked me to redraft it again. I had to change the ending. Like I couldn't have redrafted that play any more than I did. So
how many drafts?
Oh my God. Probably, I don't know, 20 more. I don't know.
Janine just pulled a face and went, 20. Yeah, great.
High Tide gave me a week of R&D on it as well. Like it was really worked on.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I was just wondered if I could sort of switch that sort of question about notes round instead of sort of taking notes. Would you give any tips to sort of directors or people who like developing work with the people about how to give those notes, or how to really understand a writer and how to sort of try to help you work on it? Because I try to do that, but always not always sure how to get the best out of a writer.
Yeah, I think it's what dramaturgs do. It's about not telling the writer how you think it should be.
Mm.
It's about trying to get to the heart of what the writer is trying to do. So there's an amazing dramaturg called David Lane who does surgeries online. I think they're about £150. So if you do an Arts Council application, try and put a bit in there for you to do a session with him on the piece. It's like, he's amazing. But he will send you a load of questions before you do the Skype with him, which is just him trying to understand what you want to do, what story are you trying to tell, and all these questions, so that he isn't putting his own opinion on it. He's trying to draw draw stuff out of you and push you in the direction that you want to go in. Yeah, just sensitive, supportive. Yeah, we're sensitive little beings, writers. It's hard.
I think it's very tempting when particularly when you're an emerging director, you want to put your stamp on everything because you're trying to forge your own identity. I mean, and certainly I think for Ollie, my experience, I remember one of the very first things that I did was a new piece of writing, and I was really into complicité, and I made this piece of writing into a piece of complicité, and it really wasn't a piece of complicité at all. So it was a real dog's dinner. It was like the form didn't suit it at all. So it's what Vickie says about sensitivity and really getting to understand what the writer is trying to achieve with the work. And of course, you know, directors can bring in enormous amounts to putting the state, you know, making that come to life.
It's asking questions, isn't it? It's
questions.
And do you know what? If you can get that skill to work dramaturgically as a director with a writer, you will be hot property. There are very few people out there that can do it, I think, that can direct new work and dramaturgically work on it as well. Steph O'Driscoll she's amazing.
And I think that's interesting because we do put that pressure on directors to be dramaturgs, because that's not really, I mean, it's a relatively new role, and actually it's a bit of a luxury if you've got a dramaturg in the room as well as a director, which I think I've only ever had the chance to have that once. So the directors are really forced into that role too. So it's a really important part of the job, I think, you know, to be able to do that.
I've had directors do it who've just been so awful. It's been like really upsetting. So it's definitely something. Yes, it's amazing if a director has that skill.
Any other questions? We've got about 4 minutes left. I think David.
Yeah, can I just say something?
Yeah.
I'm really excited that you've chosen this as the commission. It's a really lovely novel, and I thought it might end up being a film. So it's really interesting, Vickie, that you're working on this. I'm just really looking forward to that.
Oh, good.
But my question is, you've mentioned an agent a couple of times. I just wondered when an agent came into your writing career and how important that agent might be for any of us that want to get on and you know, be successful or even get listened to a bit.
Yeah, I got an agent when my play was put on at High Tide. Well, it was before we went to High Tide, so we were developing the play in London, ready to go to the festival. And Rob Drummer at High Tide said to me, you ought to have an agent. And I was like, oh, should I? He said, yes, you should. So he set me up a few meetings, and it was a bit like dating. I kind of had to go with an open mind, and the agent's dating you as well. You know, do they want to work with you? And it was cringe. And I got down to like 2, and one of them was like, let's hook up after High Tide and see where we go. And the other one said, I'd sign you now because let's just really make the most of High Tide and really push and get the right people there. And I thought, oh my God, she's taken a punt on me before you don't even know if it's going to be a success at High Tide. We don't know. And she was going to take that risk with me. So I went with her, and I'm still with her. And she's I couldn't be without her, but she's everything I'm not. She's incredibly posh, got massive bollocks, excuse my language. She's ballsy. She fights for me. She does all the things I'm terrible at, sticking up for myself, asking difficult money questions that I don't know what to do about. You know, she's really good. But yeah, you know, when you've got a piece of work on, you know, you've got your play on somewhere, that's the time to sort of put feelers out and see if people come out and come and see it.
Okay, thank you.
Great, we've got 2 minutes. What I'd like to, which is what I do every session, it's just useful for us, is if there's what you'll take away from the session, if there's anything you can reflect back that you found useful. I think David, you want to say something?
Yeah, just really, really quickly. Thank you, Vickie. It's really lovely hearing your story and your the inspirational story that you've shared, and how also your education helped in that. And it's more just a flag for anyone on here. This is the bit you miss with these video kind of formats. But I lecture at Central and interview on the writing course for BA. If anyone wanted a introduction, I'm more than happy to do that. I know that they'd be screaming out for different voices. That's what I'd look out for. So, and I would never have applied for somewhere like Central when I was there. I wouldn't have got into the courses. But there are ways around things, and that's about just showing potential, pretty much. So don't be put off by any grade things that they have, is my tip. But yeah, happy to do some soft introductions, and also the Arvin courses are pretty good. So Arvin do really good short courses, so like residency programs, 3-5 days, where you can work with a writer. And often you might be able to put those into Arts Council bids as career development, developing your creative practice, those types of things.
And Vickie, you said earlier on about because you've just put yourself out there all the time, having new workshops. So that story about Vickie Donoghue, you've just continuously hit staff and gone to workshops. And
yeah. From day one, I've just you can't do enough workshops. I don't think. I think you always get something from them, and I've learned, and now I try and teach writing workshops. I've used what I've learned in other writing workshops. Lovely exercises, things to just stretch your writing muscle, and yeah, I love courses, writing courses, Q&As. I love as well, just because just do as much as you can, I think.
So, what people would take away from the session? It would just be really lovely to hear.
From my point of view, I'm sort of fairly new to the industry, and so it's just really, really interesting to sort of see and understand how other aspects of the industry actually work. And loved sort of Vickie's story of how she sort of all the different courses that she went through, and her kind of whole experiences. So yeah, just really interesting for me to kind of, and helps my education in the industry as a whole. So yeah, really interesting stories. Yeah.
Right, thank you. Does anyone else want to feedback? Anything they found useful?
Hello. I just love that you said that you kind of came into it a bit later, like once you'd got past your 30th birthday, because I'm 33 and I trained as an actor, which I do most of the time, but I've recently really found the joy in writing. So just to hear you say that you got into it a bit later is really encouraging. And also, you're an incredible name dropper. I've got a massive list of names that I can go and research. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh dear.
Name dropper in a useful way.
Yeah, very useful. Very, very. No, that wasn't like an obituary. Yeah, that was very useful. Thank you.
Or anything else? Anyone else would like to share their takeaways?
Just do as much as you can. And
Yeah,
soak it all
do
up.
as much as you can.
It's brilliant.
Which is a kind of similar thing from Old Trunk as well, isn't it? Just get up and fucking do it is what you said, Vickie, which is, I think, was also what Sarah and Sadie said, which I think is useful. Next week, just thank you so much for coming. It's such a pleasure to spend time with you, and also particularly for Vickie, a bit of a round of applause for Vickie. It's such a superstar, and yeah, do come and see Witchfinder Sister. It's a really exciting project. I would say, so next week, we're going to do a kind of sharing session, which is a bit, offering advice. I'm calling it a bring and buy sale. So it's really a chance for us to talk to each other rather than focusing just on two people chatting and then opening it up. And what I'd really love you to do, it's really, because a lot of the great connections happen generally before a workshop or in the tea break or after, and we don't really have the luxury of having that. So I sort of wanted to create the space to sort of and we might have a tea break where we all go away and get our cups of tea and bring them back together. But it's really a chance to meet each other, because there are lots of new faces, and I'd love a chance to hear people's stories as well, what they're up to and where they're from. And what I'd like you to, you'll get an email from Lauren tomorrow, and all it will ask you to do is to think about what you would bring, and that can be anything. just a little insight in your experience of what you do that you might want to share with someone else. It's a bit like David talking about Central, you know, it's a lovely thing to bring. We can't all offer things on that scale, but there might be a useful thing that you've learned as a practitioner, or a particular contact, like Sadie and Sarah, metal, that connection with metal was a really lovely thing to bring to these. So, and then I want you to think about what you would like, what would you like to take away? You know, what would be on sale that you would take away? A little nugget, like Richard's thing about agents. I'd like to know more about an agent relationship. It can be anything. It can be anything that we've also, some of us have asked before. And then what would that, just when you email that back, it will help us put together what the shape of the session will be, so that we can try and facilitate that as much as possible. So it's really a chance to hang out. It will be, I will be using some of the technology on Zoom I've never used before. So that's exciting. But it's what, you know, it's worth a go. It's so lovely to hang out with you all. So it'd be really nice to actually speak, you know, meet person to person a little more in the next session. So thank you for all coming along. Thank you, Vickie.
Thank you. It's been fun.
And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Vickie. Thanks, Doug.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.